Ted kept walking towards the house. Total Complete Carnage with Ted and Jimmy by Michael Wiley. Ted Smith dumped the body in the meat truck and then proceeded to cut it into pieces, starting with the spleen, then the rib cage, and onto the liver. When he finished, he got out of the truck and shot the woman who'd been following him with his M16 rifle. The mission to kill Jimmy was over. Ted went home to his flat and relaxed with a cigarette and a glass of orange juice. The next day he went to town to buy the weapons he had always wanted, an RP6 and the Swiss Army knife he'd saved up for, and the Desert Eagle, Cougar Magnum, and a Walther PPK. He then got his copy of Doctor Who magazine and Radio Times, and then blew the street up and went home. That night he arrived outside the building for the drop-off point. It was a building that had a spire, a steeple, columns, and a statuette. There was an oblong motif on top of the steeple. He walked inside the steeple and went up a long flight of stairs. At the top, he saw a mirror in front of him. He looked at himself. He was of average height. He was an old and withered man with a moustache. He had a little amount of grey hair. Any that he did have was on the sides and back of his head. He had slightly long sideburns and wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He had braces attached to his grey trousers and was of slim build. He had recently lost a bit of weight, which was obvious because of the sleeves of skin hanging off his chin. He drew out his Cougar Magnum and loaded a round of bullets into it. He waited for Sanchez to pick up the briefcase with the money inside. He waited for him to walk out of the building and then followed, then turned around. Seeing the MI6 officers, he drew out his RP6 and blew the building apart. He got into his TVR and headed for the docks. He boarded the boat named Watercrest. Sanchez took the rotting pieces of what was Jimmy and dumped them inside a coffin. Sanchez was sat in the front of the hearse. He sat next to the driver. They made their way to the dump site somewhere in Key West. Suddenly, Jimmy burst out of the coffin. Must be a Jimmy the zombie. He drew out a Cougar Magnum and blew Sanchez's head off into the windscreen, then shot off the driver's arms, blowing rounds into their bodies. Then he started to cut them into pieces. He dumped their bodies into a manure pit where the vultures would finish them off. Jimmy torched the vultures. He got in the hearse and drove home. On his way, he stopped off at the newsagent and bought some penny sweets and a copy of Dandy. After filling up the hearse, he blew up the local petrol station. Finally, he arrived home and went to sleep. The truth on his dog. They went missing, starting with the spleen, then